Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about why the deadlift is the least dependent of the big three regarding muscle mass versus the amount of weight that you can lift, and in particular not even muscle mass but body weight. Because this is something that comes up a lot of times. You'll have people who say, well, how come this one guy who's not that big can really deadlift a lot of weight? Of course, they'll try to extrapolate that over to their squat and bench press, and then you look and their squat and bench press won't be that good. I'm not going to name names, but there's at least one pretty famous YouTuber who, has barely a 400-pound squat. A little over 400 is his lifetime best. A sub 300 bench, and then people will try to say, oh, well, he's not that big. Why does he have such a really good deadlift? It's like, well, he doesn't have that good of a squat or a bench press, though. So it still meets the pattern that we're talking about. And when the studies have looked at it, they've found the same thing. That as far as correlation with body weight, when you get into pretty strong circles, even in powerlifting, the deadlift itself is least correlated with the amount of body weight that you have. And in fact, when we start looking at different people out there, you find that some guys have better deadlifts than guys in much, much, much heavier weight classes in them. And I mean, a perfect example, you can compare someone like Ray Williams with Kaylor Woolham. Kaylor Woolham weigh in like 215, even though he can't squat or bench anything even remotely close to what Ray Williams can. He out deadlifts him. Ray Williams is over 300 pounds. He's well over 100 pounds heavier. Well, and it has to do with the fact that the deadlift is more dependent on leverages, right? It's more dependent on leverages. What do I mean? Arm and leg lengths. Because the shorter you are, the better you're going to be at a deadlift. Because most of our height comes from our legs, right? It's most of our height comes from our legs. A lot of people don't realize that. Your height is largely determined by your legs. When you're looking at someone's torso and up, you don't have a very good objective idea of how tall they are. There isn't that much variation in torso lengths in adult males. The majority of your height difference tends to be in your legs. Well, if your legs are shorter, a deadlift gets dropped down much, much, much shorter, right? Because the plates are at a fixed height. A deadlift, the plates are at a fixed height. That's why a lot of times we manipulate them in training. You guys will see me and other people doing block pulls. We'll do deficit pulls. You'll see both of those in this video. You'll see me pulling from blocks that are 2 inches tall to cut the range of motion. You'll see me standing on a plate to make 2.5 inches longer range of motion. Short guys tend to have better deadlifts because they don't have to move the weight as far, because their legs are shorter. Now, conversely, in many cases, they have short arms, because it makes sense. Usually, if you're shorter, you usually have shorter arms. But that isn't always the case. That's not always the case. So what happens when you have the opposite? Someone who has short legs, maybe a guy who's slightly shorter than average, has really long arms. Well, he's going to have a great deadlift if he trains it. So you've got those things to factor in. Those are big, big, big factors. Number two, the muscles involved in the deadlift as far as primary movers are not necessarily as big of muscles as people think of. Yeah, we look at the deadlift and say, but aren't all those muscles being used? The lats, the traps, the hamstring screws, yeah, they are. But because the deadlift is a very joint angle specific exercise, the actual muscle fibers involved with the deadlift, because none of those are moving through a full range of motion. And I'm not saying getting those muscles bigger won't improve your deadlift, it just won't be proportionate. Okay. But because of the leverages involved, the deadlift is a partial exercise. Every single muscle involved in the deadlift, other than maybe the spinal erectors, which are not that big of a muscle, isn't going through a full range of motion. It might be more so on a deficit. Look at this deficit deadlift. Yeah, that's increasing the range of motion. That's putting some of them into larger range of motion. Here's where muscle mass matters more. Right? Because I'm having to pull at a longer range of motion. Yeah, my muscle mass does count more here because it's harder. But generally speaking, you only have to hypertrophy certain fibers in each of those muscles. And if your training is specific just to the deadlift, it's not going to be a proportionate amount of muscle that you need to create that. Now, someone who builds all those muscles maximally, they're going to have a better deadlift, but it's not going to carry over the same. In other words, if you add 3 pounds of muscle in just the right places through those muscles, it could translate to another 70 or 80 pounds on your deadlift. But it's not going to be like the other lifts. If you add 5 pounds of muscle in the right place, your bench press is going to go up enormously. If you add 5 pounds of muscle in the right places, your squat is going to go up enormously. It's going to go up enormously. And in fact, even gaining body fat makes you better at these. This is what they've looked at in the research too. That's why it's so heavily correlated with body weight. Not only are the squat and the bench press very, very heavily dependent upon muscle mass and less on leverages. Leverages do matter. Not as much as the deadlift though. But not only does muscle mass matter the most, because again, they're longer range of motion exercises relative to the joint angles involved in a deadlift, you need more complete hypertrophy. Okay? But body fat helps. If you have more body fat, your pecs are thicker. And I don't just mean on the outside. That's one thing people forget with fatter people. You have more intermuscular fat. You have more fat under the muscle. In other words, your whole chest gets bigger. You cut the range of motion. A little bit extra squish around the arms. It's not as good as having extra bicep muscle to bounce off of. All right, having bigger arms can help out of the bottom out of a bench, even though those muscles aren't primary movers per se. But extra fat gives you more cushion. Just kind of squish you out of the bottom. In other words, body fat helps the bench press. It cuts range of motion. And it can give you a leverage advantage. Look at the squat, same thing. Sometimes that big squat belly, guys get a bigger belly or fat in the right places. Yeah, muscle would be better. Yes, having bigger hamstrings would be better for bouncing out of the bottom. But fat will do part of the same job. Extra fat on the back of your leg might help a deep squat. A little bit. Sometimes that belly can help you get them started off the thighs for a big fat guy like Ray Williams. Squatting 1,000 pounds, that belly helps him. And in fact, someone who arches big and benches low, the belly could help him on the bench press. So even body fat helps. So weight matters. What about the deadlift? Big fat guys can't deadlift as much. Don't believe me, look at a lot of these fat strongman competitors. Yes, they have monstrously big deadlifts, but if you start scaling it to body weight, and anyway, even with a Wilks, they don't hang with leaner guys on the deadlift. Why? Belly gets in the way. Leverages matter on the deadlift. Having long arms and short legs helps you a lot. Having a big belly hurts you. It hurts you. If you have a big belly, you're going to have to pull sumo to get your best numbers. Because look right here. Look with me. I don't have a belly. But even then, my little bit of loose skin, you see it rolls forward, especially on this deficit deadlift. Right? If you've got a big old belly, what does that do? It gets in the way. You can't get down to the bar. You can't get down to the bar. You have to take your feet wider. And if you take your feet wider, what happens? You just created a deficit deadlift. You made it harder. So a belly might improve your squat. It might improve your bench press, but it will hurt your deadlift. It will hurt your deadlift. Now, am I saying that guys shouldn't be worried about body composition if they want a great deadlift? No. I'm saying a great body composition will help you. Just understand that leverages are a problem. But body weight itself won't help you the same. Weighing more won't help you. Having better body composition will improve your deadlift. Getting your body fat low so that you don't have a belly in the way, that'll help you. And since the fat doesn't improve your deadlift, it's not going to help your score to get fatter anyways. All right? Adding muscle in the right places. Now, if you get your erectors and your traps and your hamstrings as big as possible, you have big deadlift. Right? Anybody with big hamstrings and big traps usually can pull 600 pounds. All right? So you guys see I've got on the bar here. Got 600 there. Got big erectors and big traps. Helps. So yeah, adding muscle in the right places will certainly help you. But it needs to be focused on body composition. But you need to understand that the deadlift will always be subject to leverages and height more than other people. That's why you really shouldn't spend a lot of time worried about it as far as weight class goes, because you see the records all over the place on weight class. And there's the reasons for it that I broke down. Really, you need to focus on, if you're going to worry about your strength versus weight, you need to be thinking in terms of the squat and the bench press. They're very, very heavily dependent. The deadlift simply isn't that dependent upon it. It's just not. So don't really think about it. That's the worst thing you can do as a lifter, to start saying, well, and you start trying to scale your future, compare yourself to other guys on body weight versus deadlift. I really wouldn't. I would just say you can either deadlift more than them or you can't. Save the body weight comparisons for the lifts that matter the most for as far as body weight goes, where the actual body weight gives you an advantage. Deadlift, not so much. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.